Good morning, my name is Alison Dunn and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be part of this important conversation today. Now, I want to start with a truth that's uncomfortable but very simple. The only two things that we can be certain of in this life are death and taxes. We plan carefully for one and we avoid talking about the other entirely, and yet death will touch every single one of us, in our families, our friendships, our communities. How we face it, how we talk about it, and how we support one another through it says a lot about who we are. Now, today is about facing that honestly, not with fear or avoidance, but with openness, compassion, and evidence. I want to share a story. I wrote a blog about this not that long ago. A friend of mine lost her husband unexpectedly while they were abroad. In a single day, she went from being a partner, a friend, a wife, to being a project manager of her own grief. She was thrown into a world of phone calls across countries and territories, to airlines, banks, mortgage companies, insurance providers. Every conversation forced her to repeat the worst words of her life. There was no single point of help, no joined-up system, no one to share that load. And she's not alone. For so many people, the hardest part isn't just the grief. It's the practical and emotional chaos that comes with it. Now, there's another truth that we need to talk about, and that's inequity. Not everyone has the same experience of death and dying. Some people can plan ahead. They can write a will at a cost of around £150 to £300. They can access legal advice to support the preparation of lasting powers of attorney at a cost of around £1,200. They can afford a funeral, which sits at anything from £3,500 to £5,000. And insurance, the cost of which is wildly variable depending upon circumstances. Now, others can't afford any of this. And while some may be able to write their own wills or to submit their own online forms to secure a lasting power of attorney, many can't. And others simply won't get around to it before the day comes when they need these things. I don't know about you, but I'm awful at my own admin. And when that day comes, some can take time off work to care for someone they love. Others can't afford to take a single day. Some have real choices about how and where they die. Others have none at all. Now, the Lancet Commission on the Value of Death highlighted this in 2022. Death reflects and often deepens the inequalities that already exist in our society. The cost of dying, the financial, emotional, and social cost is huge. And when compassion is left to chance instead of built into systems, those with the least resources carry the heaviest burden. Now, here in Gateshead, our own consultation painted a clear picture. Many people told us they find it difficult to talk about death, and that's not surprising, it's not commonplace. That silence leads to confusion, to fear, and a feeling of isolation. Carers said that they often feel invisible, undervalued, entirely unseen. And when their loved one dies, any support they had just disappears. We heard that services exist, but they're fragmented. People don't know what's available, or if they do, how to access it. Now, there's no doubt that the clinicians care deeply, but of course there's also no doubt that they are very stretched. They don't always have the time to communicate in the way that they'd like. Bereavement services are patchy, sometimes costly, and especially hard to access for young people, carers, and marginalised communities. And for many, poverty, isolation, and digital exclusion make everything harder. Now, this isn't about bad intentions. It's about good people working in a system that doesn't fit together. This is why a joined-up approach matters very much. Death doesn't just happen in hospitals. In fact, only a tiny fraction of our final year of life is spent in healthcare settings. The other 95% happens at home. It happens in workplaces, in schools, in communities, and in faith spaces. If we want to support people properly, we need an ecosystem, and for everyone to play their part. Employers that build compassion into their policies. Now, many years ago, a new employee of mine who hadn't quite started work with us called to say that someone they loved had died, and could they have a day off in their first week of employment with us. Now, I'm ashamed to say that at that time, our policies didn't describe their loved one as someone who was worthy of a paid day off, and I feel thoroughly ashamed of that now. But a decade on, I'm pleased to say that we have faced into this problem and that no longer happens. Our policies are now non-binary. They recognise families and the ties that bind us to one another come in all shapes and sizes, and they leave it to the employee to decide who is a close relative or friend, not us. This small change can make a massive difference. And of course, we need health services that are well-resourced and connected to communities. Schools and youth services that help young people to access and understand the services that they need to talk about loss. Faith and community organisations that provide trusted spaces for support. And government and local authorities that make death, dying and bereavement a priority, not an afterthought. This is exactly what the Lancet Commission called a realistic utopia, a society where care networks are woven into everyday life, not an optional nice to have. This is the vision of compassionate Gateshead, a borough where no one faces death or dying or grief alone, where services are visible, connected and easy to navigate, where conversations about death are normal, not avoided, where support for carers and families doesn't stop at the funeral, as is so often the case now, where fairness and compassion are built into the system, not left to luck. Imagine a Gateshead where a carer doesn't have to make 10 phone calls, where a grieving child is supported, not silenced, where workplaces respond with compassion, not a countdown clock, where health services, schools, faith groups, employers and local government all work together to hold people up at the hardest time in their lives. Now, we can't take away the pain of death. It would be madness to suggest that we can, but we can reshape the experience of dying, of caring and of grieving. Compassion isn't just a feeling, it's a structure, it's a strategy, and it's something that we can build together. And this is our moment to act across sectors: health, communities, employers, schools, government. So I invite you to ask yourself, as I have done, what is my role in this ecosystem? What can I shift in my organisation, in my community, in my everyday conversations that can make a difference? Because if each of us takes just one step and we join those steps together, we can build a Gateshead where no one faces death alone, where no one is left alone in their grief, and no one is left alone carrying an administrative and financial burden that is way too heavy for one person. Now, I'm very sorry that I can't be with you today. I have a commitment outside of the area that I simply couldn't avoid, but I hope that you have a productive morning, and I thank you for giving up your time to have this hugely important conversation. Bye-bye now.